Hello everybody, I'm Lucian and today I have a special guest from Intel Corporation, the Senior Director of Industrial Innovation, Dr. Irene Petrick. So Dr. Irene Petrick has been exploring the industrial landscape to better understand the changes that digital transformation or industrial transformation will drive in factories and in the ecosystems companies that support them. Her research includes over 400 manufacturing and ecosystems company participants, including over 190 technologies directly involved in creating and implementing smart technologies. The two-phase study began with a look inside the factory, determining that Industry 4.0 would require that workers co-evolve with manufacturing operations. So let's welcome Dr. Petrick and explore a couple of questions such as how do we future-proof the industrial workforce? And what's keeping the Industry 4.0 from really taking off? Welcome, Dr. Petrick.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Can you give us an overview as to what were the motivating factors for Intel from a chip manufacturer to now look at the manufacturing and its ecosystem?
I actually get asked that question a lot. It turns out that Intel is an ingredients supplier and a solution supplier to manufacturers, but we don't sell directly to them. However, we had the belief that if we wanted to solve problems in the future, we had to understand those problems with much more depth. Intel's a world-class manufacturer, heavily digitized. And we recognize that the level of digitization we have in our factories is not necessarily consistent with the rest of the manufacturing world. And so my colleague Faith McCrary and I undertook this study, a series of studies, really to better understand the problem space in the manufacturing landscape.
Got it. Thank you for that. Now, I know there's a lot of disruption happening with digitalization, and also the adoption seems to be somewhat slow. So what's keeping the Industry 4.0 from really taking off? There's a lot of benefits there. So what did you find out?
That's a great question, and it's one that there isn't a simple answer to or even a single answer. A lot of our work points to the fact that manufacturers are eager to get started. They have trouble, however, thinking about the full scope of the solution. And so many of these manufacturers are stuck in what you're hearing called pilot purgatory. I can stand up a project, a digital project. We call them smart projects. I can stand up a smart project, but I end up either not having the right infrastructure or not having thought about where the compute should happen or how much bandwidth I'm going to need. And so very rarely do these solutions actually scale into full production. And so that is one of the things we think is holding it back, is that you have to have a vision of what you think digital transformation can do for your specific company. And then you need to incrementally implement things. We're not seeing companies have that, start out with that larger vision to understand how they could actually improve their processes incrementally over time.
Got it. Now, you mentioned scaling up. There's infrastructure issues. There might be a little bit of a skill gap there. Can you talk a little bit about what do we do about the industrial workforce? How do we educate them to be more digital savvy, if you will?
Yeah. The workforce, as we see it today, is heavily focused on manufacturing knowledge. So I'm always trying to recruit people who have direct process knowledge in my specific kind of company operation. What we're seeing, however, is many of those workers, while they may be very skilled manufacturing related, aren't necessarily equally skilled in digital kinds of tools. They haven't really thought about what it means to virtualize. They haven't thought about what it would mean to have completely open and interoperable architectures so that we don't have vendor lock-in with a specific kind of a technology. So when you think about what skill sets are needed, it's not that I want to get rid of manufacturing knowledge or even replace it. I want to augment it with an understanding of how computers work, how digital technologies can be deployed, and how they could actually improve the overall operations of the manufacturing lines.
Got it. And what do you think it can be done now? I know in some parts of the world, for instance, particularly in Europe, the perception is that they might be a little further ahead, perhaps even Asia. Is government playing a role into this, into perhaps making system more interoperable, or should they be prepared?
Well, I think certainly government is playing a role in terms of thinking about the workforce needs of the future. I'm not convinced they always get it in terms of how to provide that training in a way that's snackable. So we think about training as being classes that you go and take or week-long off-sites that you go and do. Those probably aren't as meaningful in this new world of digital because you have to actually learn some things and then roll up your sleeves and practice them and get your hands dirty on projects. And without one or the other, building that workforce, building that digital dexterity is very difficult to do. And we're not seeing those kinds of training programs really coming out to a big way.
Talk about the roles and responsibilities in the educational system and government. Who should handle what?
I think that the traditional roles of universities educating four-year baccalaureate degree engineers and throwing them into industry is probably not as useful as it was 2 or 3 or 4 decades ago. You need that fundamental knowledge base for the manufacturing operations, but you also need to have very good hands-on experience. So internships, projects, semester-long projects, and they need to be cross-functional. And this is something that I don't think our universities are doing as good enough a job with. If I'm only trained as a mechanical engineer, for example, I understand deeply the mechanical engineering field, but then I get into some of these digital transformation projects, and I find when I'm in industry, I need to work highly cross-disciplinary across multiple silos, across multiple kinds of expertise, and I have to have digital tools. And we're not specifically training engineers in those digital tools. And that's a real gap. So that's one thing. And so I think industry needs to get more deeply involved in mentoring, in creating meaningful class projects, in creating opportunities for co-ops and internships. So I think that's a gap that industry needs to fill. Academics, on the other hand, need to be able to really anticipate what digital skills will be needed. One of the things in this study that we've been doing comes up again and again and again, which is digital tools are absolutely essential to driving manufacturing excellence in the next decade. And we're finding that being a lifelong learner is a critical individual attribute that companies believe is essential. And I think we need to create training programs that address that lifelong learning activity. So rather than having a standalone course, we need to be thinking about these courses as being linked together with a progression of skill development over time. And then we need to customize them, I think, for the specific role that individual has, the goals that individual has moving forward, and then the goals that the company has moving forward.
Got it. Thank you for that. And actually a couple of things, because if I look at it, the tools are there, right? So if you look at Coursera, it offers course that I could take from Cleveland, Ohio. I could be enrolled in a machine learning class at Stanford University or some other class at MIT. So really have to be driven from within to take that. Now, obviously the institution formalizes that education. In fact, I was just proposing at Cleveland State University on Friday night that maybe we should inject in the syllabus. Here's another recommended online course from another university that you could take that in addition. But
the thing that those courses don't have is the opportunity for hands-on learning. And we think that's a critical piece. We have just finished this study of over 400 participants, and they're telling us they want not only to have the opportunity to take courses, but they need to have the organization really appreciate what it means to take those courses and what it means to have the chance to practice that knowledge on their daily job. And that's the piece I think that's missing right now, that we have to build in consciously in our organizational culture going forward.
Got it. Now, in your study, did you come across a better way of starting, let's say, training an IT person, a more digital skilled person into a process, or start from the OT skilled person and train him on a digital tool? Is there a better way of approaching that? Which student should I look for? Engineering, mechanical engineer, or someone who graduated in IT and computer science?
If you have someone who is a practicing engineer now, they have to have the interest and the capacity to apply digital tools. I wouldn't say you can only start from one direction or the other, but you have to have somebody who has an interest in bridging those two basic skill sets. Most manufacturers would suggest that you want to start with the manufacturing excellence and build in IT excellence, that you can train some of those IT concepts more readily. That may be true. But I think that for things, for example, 3D printing requires a whole different way of designing products. Can I learn that on the job? Can I learn that in a class? Do I have to have a chance to apply it? That's where some of these things have to be merged and meshed more carefully.
Got it. Now, I'm right here in the heart of U.S. manufacturing. I mentioned a little bit earlier. We got 50% of U.S. manufacturing within half a day worth of drive. 80% or roughly 80% is small to mid-sized companies, 20 people or less. Maybe perhaps the owner is also the CTO or maybe all in one. What advice do you have for those organizations to get on board and not be left behind on this digital transformation journey?
Yeah, so that's a tough one. Another tough question. You keep asking me these tough questions. Part of the problem is that I need to be able to target education to where that person is now. So if I'm speaking at a very high level, I'm not helping that person develop skills. If I'm speaking at a very rudimentary level, I'm not really helping either. So education, number one, has to be much more customized. Job training has to be much more customized and hands-on. Things like apprenticeship programs are useful. Hands-on activities and examples are useful. The thing we're seeing, though, is that many companies have actually reduced their training budgets. And even if they haven't, they don't necessarily have the skills in-house to translate into meaningful hands-on digitally based exercises. And so if you don't have the skill set in-house already, then you're probably trying to bring in an external consultant or an external trainer that doesn't necessarily create lasting knowledge in your company over time.
Got it. Thank you so much for that insight and digital transformation of manufacturing. So thank you, Dr. Petrick.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.